Is it coming to a head between Venezuela's dueling presidents?
Today, a large number of brave army soldiers are standing behind me in support of the Venezuelan constitution. I call on all Venezuelan people to take to the street to support what we have done in the last few years.
Assembly Speaker Juan Guaido speaking before dawn from a Caracas area air base alongside the leader and founder of his Voluntad Popular party, Leopoldo Lopez. Lopez sprung from house arrest and protected by what appeared to be military men. Which side the soldiers obey in the coming hours and days will be key. It's been 3 months since Guaido declared himself leader, but after initial recognition by U.S.-led regional powers and many nations here in Europe, the country's found itself in a holding pattern. Some even wondering if Guaido had run out of steam. The Maduro camp calling on citizens to come out and rally against what one military commander calls, quote, a minuscule group of misguided souls and cheats. Pivotal moments for a nation and for a continent. And while the far-right leadership of neighboring Brazil has signaled its backing for Guaido, Mexico's left-wing president urging restraint in Venezuela. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the showdown there. And joining us from Caracas, law student Diego Áñez, who was earlier out and about. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. With us as well here in the studio is journalist Saray Suarez. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Natalia Brandler, who heads the Paris-based Latin American Political Studies Group. And from Philadelphia, political scientist George Ciccarello Maher, the author of We Created Chavez, A People's History of the Venezuelan Revolution. Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yeah, it's a military base known as La Carlota. It's in the east of the capital, where it all started. Kathy Clifford has more.
Gunshots rang out at this bridge outside the Caracas air base as men in military uniform accompanying the Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido appeared to exchange fire with soldiers loyal to President Maduro. Earlier that morning, security forces fired tear gas at Guaido and hundreds of civilians as the opposition leader spoke to journalists on the bridge. He said that troops had joined him to oust President Nicolas Maduro and called for Venezuelans to take to the streets.
Today, an important part of the armed forces, not only in Caracas but in the entire country as well, has put itself on the side of the Venezuelan constitution. The call is for everyone to come out onto the streets at this moment.
Also by Guaido's side, formerly detained opposition activist Leopoldo Lopez, who said he was freed from house arrest by members of the security forces responding to an order by Guaido. The head of Maduro's party downplayed what his government described as an attempted coup as he spoke by phone on state TV.
We're already deployed. And as in the plans, we invite all the people from here, we invite all the people of Caracas to come to the Miraflores Palace. We're here if they want to meet at the palace to defend the revolution and defend our people.
Maduro has claimed the, quote, total loyalty of his military chiefs. Crowds of his supporters gathered in Caracas, while hundreds of opposition supporters took to the streets in response to Guaido's call, as Venezuelan police moved to quell the crowds with tear gas.
Diego Áñez, tell us what you've seen there in Caracas this Tuesday.
Okay, currently I'm in a mall near La Carlota on the military base. I'm safe. I was part of the first protesters to get here. We were trying to talk with the military. We were not violent. We were just trying to talk with them. And they suddenly ambushed us and started firing us with tear gas. I'm sorry if I look away from the camera, but I'm close to a window and sometimes I hear things. I want to see what's happening. It's very confusing what's happening. We don't know what's happening. I can see a lot of smoke coming from nearby the military base. I also see a lot of movement inside the military base, but it's very, very strange and it's very confusing. We don't know what's happening right now.
Don't know what's happening right now. Brazil's president's security advisor has said in the past minutes that the situation is undecided in Venezuela. It's not clear how much support Guaido has from the military. Diego, what happened? Tell us about your day. You woke up at what time, and when did you hear that there was all this activity going on where you are?
Okay, I woke up very early in the morning at 6 a.m. I was preparing to go to the university. I had an exam. But when I started checking my phone, all of my social media started popping up news that there was militaries gaining momentum against Maduro, Guaido speaking that he needed help, that he called the people to go to the streets in a non-violent way. So I started talking with my family, with my friends to see what we were going to do. And that's what we did. We went to La Carlota to see what was going on. We wanted to speak with the military. We wanted to see what they thought, what they think about what was going here. And they opened the gates. We started going in. And 5 minutes in, they started shooting at us with tear gas, rubber bullets. And we started running inside the nearest building that it's this small, that it's beside La Carlota. I'm inside. There was a lot of panic at start. People is confused. Social media, it's very hard to get in. Twitter, Instagram are down, or from my phone, I cannot enter them. It's very difficult to know what is happening. I'm currently safe, although there is sometimes people running, scared. It's very, very confusing. We don't know what's happening. We don't know. We don't have any official statement, or it's hard to hear from them. I know for a fact that there are some radio stations that have been taken down by the government right now. We were hearing one through the internet, and it was taken down. It's a very confusing situation right now.
Sarah Suarez, the situation is confusing. Again, Brazil, which has clearly sided with Juan Guaido, their security advisor saying that Guaido has popular support, but it's not clear that the military is abandoning Maduro. At this point in time, it's touch and go, it seems.
It is actually the situation right now. We don't know exactly how many people are on the side of Guaido or supporting the government. We know that this has been the situation since the beginning of this new movement. There is an assumption that there is a big part of the military that are not happy with the regime of Maduro. And let's remember, they are suffering the same difficulties of the everyday life that all the Venezuelans, their families are struggling without water, without food, without medicine. So everybody is in the same ship right now. And the thing right now is to know when is this moment gonna be bigger enough to tilt completely the militaries to the side of Guaido. Let's remember the elite military is obviously on the side of the government. They are in power, and they are related to cases of corruption, etc. So I don't think they are going to move from their position. It's more the medium levels and the low levels that are being waited and expected on the side of
And do we
Guaido.
have news? Because there have been coups before in Venezuela. If a coup is successful, you would know it pretty fast, or?
The difference is that it depends. In this situation, we are not completely in front of a coup d'etat. I mean, this is a rebellion. This is a military rebellion going on the side of Guaido. Let's remember, for the government, obviously, this is a coup d'etat because they believe themselves in power by real means. But we know that it was a scam election, that it was a tricked election that bring them in power. So if you consider a dictatorship as the real government, obviously, the coup is the right way, but from the vision of the opposition of Juan Guaido following the constitution rules, this is a rebellion of the militaries trying to bring the government, the country back to the constitutional way.
Have you been able to reach people in cities outside of Caracas?
It's very difficult to communicate with people in Venezuela. A few messages we can get from WhatsApp and other social media. What I know from Zulia, Táchira, Mérida, Sucre, different regions in the country, This morning, the situation was calm because it was just the beginning. Right now, people are starting to go out and to concentrate in different places of the cities to have demonstrations in their places and show the support to Guaido.
George Chiquirello Maher, what's your take on how the day is unfolding?
Well, it was interesting to see this occur today. Of course, the opposition had large protests planned for tomorrow. I think probably what we're seeing is a bit of desperation by Juan Guaido, knowing this is really his last option, probably suspecting that the marches tomorrow would not go off as planned. And so you've seen what is absolutely undeniably a coup orchestrated by the Venezuelan opposition with the support of the United States and right-wing governments across Latin America. And a coup that, as far as it seems, still doesn't claim much support within the military. We're getting reports that soldiers have come out and said that they were tricked to show up at La Carlota this morning. They weren't told why they were going there. And when they showed up, they were stood in front of the cameras, and it was only then that this coup was declared. So you've got a questionable support within the military, obviously questionable support within the population as a whole that is very frustrated, of course, with the economic crisis. Many frustrated, of course, with the government responsible in many ways for that crisis, but certainly not willing to support a military coup. And certainly not one backed by Trump and Pence from the United States.
Natalia Brandler, we haven't seen a mass uprising, right? We saw several dozen in those videos of soldiers alongside Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez this morning. Well, so far, we haven't seen the call hasn't. We don't have proof of the call being heeded by.
No, we don't. We don't have proof that there's a military uprising all over the country. But first thing we need to know is this is not a coup, cannot be a coup, because we have to think that Maduro is an usurper. He took power even though this election was not recognized. So right now, what we are seeing instead of a coup is trying to a restitution of the constitutional order. And of course, the military are very important in this moment, but we have to remember also that the military are under a lot of control from the Cuban who have already in Venezuela all these, they are under surveillance permanent. There's already more than 200 military that are in prison because they are all the time being heard, they are followed, and there's very difficult for them, even though they would like to be allied with Guaido, to manifest that, because that would mean prison for them and their families. So it's not clear what the situation is. What we've seen in those videos is not the military, it's the National Guard. And we haven't seen high-rank military up to now, openly being on the side of Guaido.
Let me ask Diego Áñez about this. At the outset, you said that you tried to engage with the soldiers. How many soldiers did you see when you were there?
No, we weren't going to engage violently with the soldiers. We wanted to talk with them. There were like 20 soldiers, and they started chatting up. They opened the gates, and they let us in. The problem is that when people started coming in, they ambushed us. I heard someone telling that this was a coup. This is not a coup. The coup was perpetrated by Nicolas Maduro on January 5th when he assumed power, when he couldn't assume power. Right now, what they're trying to do is trying to bring back the Constitution to its form of law. And that's why this is not a coup. Okay, it's very difficult to know what's happening. It is very difficult to go out in the streets right now. I'm right now near the La Carlota, and there is still tear gas being spread to different protesters that are still on the streets. It is very difficult. I saw 20, maybe 30 militaries. I don't know. I never saw Guaido. We were only trying to talk with the military inside the military base. We were trying to talk, and they ambushed us. We didn't have any weapons. We didn't. We only wanted to talk, to think, to see what they wanted from this, what they thought about this, and instead they ambushed us.
We're watching live images here from the bridge near those Air Force barracks, and you can see the white smoke there is tear gas, the black smoke perhaps burning tires. There was a tweet earlier by Venezuela's president, "Nerves of steel." That's the top line of that tweet by Nicolas Maduro, who says he has spoken to all senior commanders who've shown me, quote, their total loyalty to the people, to the Constitution, and to the homeland. I call for a maximum popular mobilization to ensure the victory of the people. Venceremos. We will overcome, is how he concludes that tweet at this time. And yeah, it raises the question if at the end of the day the army hasn't turned against him at this point in time, what will be Washington's next move, Sara Suarez?
Just let me tell something about this tweet. Guaido claims to have talked to the same people. He's quoting in this tweet. The Redi and the Sodi are two military branches, and Guaido said also he has been talking to these people. So right now, both parties are claiming to be in contact with inside military groups, and both parts are saying that they're having positive answers. So we still need to be what's going to happen really in the street. United States, we will have to see how are they going to react. Right now, it seems that the call that has been done by the international community representatives, the president of Colombia and others, is to calling the people and the militaries to support Guaido. For the moment, I haven't seen any reaction investing themselves in this conflict. For the moment, I think they're hoping and waiting that the situation is going to be solved by Venezuelans. I wanted to say something about what Mr. Chicarello was saying before. He was saying that this was a big moment that Guaido was risking, and that is true. I believe this 3 months he has been trying to move certain pieces. Some movements have been positives, others less.
Yeah, because there was even a front page headline in the French newspaper Le Monde. Has Juan Guaido run out of steam? They were saying a few days ago.
Yes, exactly, because the movement was, and that was a general appreciation that was kind of falling down in support. But the problem is also the people has been so concerned and occupied trying to survive, because without electricity, without water, without food, without medicine. Today I was reading a report on Pro Da Vinci, a great report on a doctor who had to operate with one of those lamps that you use when you go trekking for 40 minutes trying to save the eyes of a patient on a surgery. So this is the everyday life of Venezuelans, and they don't have time to take care of all the things. Other things. So right now, this can be on a decision, a big gambling that he is doing right now, Guaido. I mean, that he is trying to move forward and to give the last options to Venezuelans to make the decisions they're waiting for.
Yeah, and I would say they have a big obstacle, which is on one side, all the paramilitaries who Maduro has taken to the streets, fearing that the military wouldn't support him. He has asked the paramilitary to go on the streets. And the other thing, as you were saying, which in turns makes people be fearful of, for their lives. And as you say, the difficulties they have for communicating and the difficulties of the everyday life that's against all this mobilization. But he has prepared for this mobilization to continue tomorrow. So I think between today and tomorrow, we'll see more development, and we'll have to trust that there's going to be some information, because they have cut all the internet. I mean, most of the chats I get information have very few information coming out. So they're kind of mute. It means that they don't have, right now, there's no internet or there's no phone connections.
George Chicarello Mayer, when you look back, are there precedents for what we're witnessing with those live images from Caracas?
I mean, of course there are precedents. The Venezuelan opposition and the United States have been attempting to overthrow this government for more than 15 years. And again, I'm a little shocked by the mental acrobatics that are happening here to try to explain that this is somehow not a coup. I mean, it's a coup. It clearly is. You can support it or you cannot. I mean, I think there are coups that should be supported against repressive regimes, against oppressive regimes. This is a coup. I mean, I think the opposition should just stand up and admit what it is that they're trying to do and be clear about that. Nicolas Maduro was re-elected by more than 6 million Venezuelans. The opposition boycotted, for the most part, the election. And so there's no question about that result. And there are lots of arguments about the conditions of that election, but Maduro won, was the president. And this coup, even if you believed Juan Guaido's story in late January about a 30-day interim presidency, that period has also dissipated. And so we're looking at a last-ditch attempt to overthrow this. Chavez was overthrown briefly for 2 days in 2002 by, again, a right-wing coup backed by the United States that was reversed by hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets to support him. Maduro is in a much more difficult situation because Venezuela is mired in a deep economic and social crisis. But the way out of this crisis is actually mediated negotiation, which is what the opposition has been refusing to participate in for the past couple of years. They walked away from the negotiating table after spending many months negotiating with the former Spanish prime minister. And the Maduro government has consistently offered to negotiate. And the negotiated solution to this crisis is really the only way out to stabilize the macroeconomic situation, the political situation, and to move forward in a democratic way, in a constitutional way, not in the military bases, not by tricking soldiers into rebelling, and not by trying to call for a military rebellion across the country.
Diego Áñez, your thoughts on the way forward?
It is very confusing. It is a very unstable situation. I'm still hearing gunshots. I'm still hearing tear gas exploding. It's very, very difficult to know. But again, this is not a coup. I'm studying law, and they teach me that when President Maduro took power on January 5th, he disobeyed the Constitution. This is not a coup. Again, what the military is trying to do, what Juan Guaido is trying to do, that he is the interim president of Venezuela because the Constitution says so, is to regain the constitutional rights this country is losing. This is very difficult. We have a president that is government officials that are linked with drugs, with drug cartels. This is very difficult. We don't know what's happening. I'm right now secure in a building near the military base, but I'm still hearing gunshots. I'm still hearing tear gas. I can see smoke from this office. It is a very confusing situation. I don't know what's happening. I haven't heard any official statement from any of any party. It is a very, very complicated situation.
Natalia Brandler, what going forward? Can there be a negotiated settlement or solution? How do you avoid bloodshed? What's the way to go forward?
Well, one way would be, of course, that we don't know if at this moment there's already some kind of a military trying to negotiate among them. That would be a possibility.
Because let's say the military doesn't turn and it stays loyal to Nicolas Maduro. What then happens to Juan Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez?
Well, probably if they are arrested, they could be, arrested or worse than that. I think this is a very tough situation, and I think that their life would be in peril. And at least we know that they could be arrested. But if they haven't been arrested yet, and we haven't seen a movement of militaries going to arrest Guaido, it means that there's some military, that something is happening within the military, that they are not being faithful to Maduro right now.
All we can go on for the time being, Sara Suarez, are the live images from the television news agencies that we're getting here in the studio. Earlier, the images we saw were of riot police that were taking on the demonstrators. What can we surmise from the situation now? It's afternoon in Caracas.
this tension is going to remain, and tomorrow the rally is going to go on, the rally that Guaido asked. We have to say also that this zone that we are watching at on these images is a military aerial base. This is a place that is controlled by military. There is helicopters and private flights that the government people use to go out and in from Caracas. The closest airport is 45 minutes at least from Caracas, the international airport of Maiquetía. So this place is a key place that also Hugo Chavez, when he gave his coup d'etat in 1992, he controlled on the first places when he tried to do that coup d'etat. I think what we're going to see in the coming days is a lot of violence, is more repression and confrontation between the members of different parts of the military and National Guard groups.
There was wavering earlier talking about one of the senior commanders of the military, Major General Jose Ornelas Ferreira, perhaps siding with Guaido. We haven't heard anything more about that.
The problem is again the communications, because the control of all the communications, internet and media are in the hands of the government. Every here and there we can send messages and communicate, but it's very difficult to organize a whole country when you can't communicate in a situation like this one. So I think we have to be very careful about what we're going to see, and a lot of verification is needed right now, and a lot of responsibility from the media also in local media to really confirm the information and try to be sure that the information that is given to the people is the right one, because there is a lot of confusion and the situation is going to remain that way because it's convenient for the regime to keep the things in a confusion situation.
All right, beware of rumors, especially or of unverified information. Again, let's look at some of those international reactions. The president of Mexico calling for restraint, once again offering his service as a mediator. The Trump administration stating its support for Guaido. This was a tweet earlier from the U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, who is hailing what's being called Operación Libertad, Operation Liberation or Freedom. The U.S. government fully supports the Venezuelan people in their quest for freedom and democracy. Democracy cannot be defeated. George Chiquirela-Mayer, your reaction to that tweet by the U.S. Secretary of State?
I mean, it's absolutely unsurprising. And what should be driven home is that a lot of these responses are unsurprising. Brazil is governed by a quasi-fascist right-wing leader. The Lima Group was part of the group of right-wing leaders that essentially planned this coup alongside the U.S. government with Juan Guaido and the Venezuelan opposition. And that's why they came out immediately and recognized it on January 23rd as well. This is not surprising. This is part of the restructuring of Latin America, the cracking away and the fragmentation of the left-wing unity that had existed, and the establishment or the attempt to establish a new right-wing hegemony. So none of this is surprising. It's, of course, not surprising that the Trump administration would be more militant about overthrowing Chavismo than was even the Obama administration that wanted the same thing. Hillary Clinton wanted the same thing. The attempt to overthrow Venezuela has been a bipartisan effort from the beginning. It's just that Trump is much more willing, and his advisors, people like Elliot Abrams, who of course are cold warriors, essentially complicit in war crimes in the past, are going to be willing to support this coup right to the very end. They're hesitating today for show, but they have been behind this from the very beginning, and they're willing to see it through. They know that violence is going to be the result. The Venezuelan opposition, Juan Guaido, knows that the point is to provoke violence in the streets today to justify even greater, reaction by the Venezuelan opposition and to attempt to fragment the military. It seems as if it hasn't worked, and let's hope, I guess, for some kind of mediated solution to allow us to move forward.
Natalia Brandler?
Violence has come for the past years from the government. They are the ones who have armed the paramilitary groups. They have the ones who control all the arms. So to say that violence is coming from the opposition is really to ignore the situation in Venezuela. Opposition has no arm. They are right now supported, plus it's not only Trump, they are supported by all the Lima Group, by the European Union. It's supported by all the democratic countries in the world, and about 60 democratic countries in the world. So I think that this idea that it is Trump who wanted to overthrow a democratic government is to give a view that has nothing to do with what really is happening in Venezuela, where the coup was given by Maduro at the moment he took a presidency he's an usurper. He didn't win those elections.
George, let me read you the statement by the spokesperson for the Spanish government, Spain's center-left prime minister. She says, we're committed to the immediate holding of elections for the election of a new president. Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister, is closely following everything that's happening in Venezuela. We hope with all our strength that there'll be no bloodshed. We support a democratic, peaceful process in Venezuela. Your thoughts on that?
Of course, so many European Union countries were willing to recognize Juan Guaido's interim presidency. Many pulled back when that interim presidency would have ended regardless. And many more, I would say probably all of them, are unwilling to support this military coup that's happening today. And you see this in the Spanish statement. Now, the call for immediate elections is a complicated one. It's not one that I agree with, in part because it's not feasible. Part of what the opposition is concerned about is the fact that it doesn't trust the National Electoral Council. And so there would need to be some process for renovating the National Electoral Council before even the opposition would support elections, which is why Guaido himself did not call for immediate elections. And then, of course, the other question is, what do you do with the fact that Maduro was just inaugurated? And it's very difficult to understand how that government would be willing to just simply call new elections because people want to hold new elections. However, the process of international discussion and mediation would certainly result in some kind of process, whether it's a new election to a National Assembly or eventually new presidential elections. But these are the kind of things that have to be discussed and need to be hashed out. Chavismo is a powerful force in Venezuela, regardless of who is in the power of the government. And so there's no way to simply move forward with Guaido seizing the reins through a military coup and act as if this is going to be a peaceful solution. It will not be peaceful. To go to La Carlota, a military base today with troops standing behind him to call a coup is not a peaceful gesture. The protesters on the streets today throwing Molotov cocktails are not peaceful. We need to all be very honest about what is happening today, and look for the best solution moving forward.
Diego Áñez, how do you see the next hours unfolding?
I mean, I have been coming to the streets to protest against this government. On the past month, I only have 12 days with electricity because of this government, because of the corruption of this government. And it is very, very difficult. I mean, we are not informed of the information. The media is in power of the government. Anything related to information is part of the government. So it's very difficult for us to understand this. And also to respond to the comments made by the person that talked before me, how can you do free elections when the electoral power is controlled by the same government? If you see what happened 2 years ago, you see that even the company that makes the machines for voting said that the elections were sham. So how can you do fair elections when you have that on front? I don't know what's going to happen. I do not know. I know that, for example, there are social medias that are coming down. It's very difficult to enter. For example, Twitter, Instagram. It's very difficult to know what is going to happen. And most probably there's going to be a lot of commotion in the streets. We're going to try and be safe inside buildings and see what happens next. But the situation is not controlled. I'm still hearing gunshots. I'm still hearing tear gas explosions. I'm still hearing protesters on the streets. The situation is not under control in any way.
Not under control. You're saying you're still hearing tear gas, and we're seeing movement there on those streets near that Air Force barracks to the east of the capital. As it was stated earlier, this Wednesday was supposed to be a day, May 1st was supposed to be a day of protest for the opposition. Diego Áñez, seeing these images that we're watching live now of soldiers with guns, do you think people are going to turn out?
I mean, I'm currently watching the streets. My view is the military base. Right now, there's not a lot of people in the streets, but an hour ago, I saw how militaries were inside tanks, and they accelerated those tanks and rolled over some people. I mean, they are going to kill civilians. We are not violent. We just wanted to talk. I'm a law student. I have no weapons. I just wanted to talk and see what is the role of the military in all of this. And what they answered was with violence. They shot at us. They rolled over some people. I mean, it's a very, very difficult situation right now. I'm still hearing the bomb exploding. I'm still hearing detonations. It's a very, very complicated thing. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what are the next days. Of course, I'm going to be in the streets tomorrow. Tomorrow was supposed to be a big rally. I'm still going. I'm going to fight for my freedom until it's my last breath.
Sorry, Suarez, what would be the tipping point right now?
I think right now the people have lost so much, even their dignity in certain cases, that there is nothing more to lose, and they're ready to go out and to fight for this. I can see how there is people still on the left trying to defend a dictatorship that has brought the country to a failure and to submit the people to the suffering they're having in Venezuela right now. It's not surprising that people are reacting this way. It's not surprising that there is a branch of militaries trying to put the country back to a constitutional way. So I can understand how there is still people ready to defend a government that has proved to be a scam and to be just manipulating the population. I think that the coming days we can see an anarchic situation in the country where nobody is going to control a lot of things, and especially the paramilitaries, the colectivos, armed groups that follow the government orders are going to be in the streets trying to make the law and put the order that they believe is the right one. They have been doing this for weeks now, forbidding people, even in the barrios, to express themselves, to try to stop every manifestation, demonstration that is exploding regarding the shortcuts of electricity or water. So we are going to keep watching this kind of scenes more and more in Caracas and maybe in other places of the country. The control of Caracas is always a key for this kind of political developments.
All right, we're watching live images here of riot police exchanging with protesters, and in those streets nearby. And scenes of confusion at this point in time. If you're just joining us here on France 24, it's unclear at this point in time who has the upper hand. There's certainly we saw earlier in the day beginning with Juan Guaido making that statement from that Air Force barracks to the east of the capital in the company of the founder of his party, Leopoldo Lopez, who had been under house arrest. They made a brief appearance outside on a couple of occasions during the morning. We haven't seen him in the last couple of hours. And we have these claims by the government of Nicolas Maduro to have the situation under control, Natalia Blandler.
Yes, what I would like to say is that we have to remember that the problem in Venezuela is not only a national problem. I mean, Maduro, if he didn't have the support of the Russian government, of the Cuban government, that for years has been sending military intelligence people, there's a study that has been conducted in Cuba, and they say between 40,000 and 100,000 Cubans are in Venezuela. So this is a geopolitical situation. It's not only a national problem right now.
Yeah,
there are many interests.
And the other side lays the same claim at Guaido, saying he's supported by Washington.
Yes, that's a claim, but the real situation is that who is giving arms to the...
We haven't had 100 militaries, Russian militaries coming to Venezuela. We haven't had 100 militaries from America coming to Venezuela. The situation is different.
They are selling arms to Venezuela. The Russians have been selling arms to Venezuela, and they are selling specialized personnel because it's a foot they have now on the hemisphere. It's the Russians have now, I mean, they're being accused of supporting even Hezbollah, supporting Cubans. I mean, this is
all right,
has been documented. It's not speculation.
We're running short on time, so just very briefly before we go, Diego Áñez, what's the situation where you are right now?
Okay, I'm currently near the military base. I'm inside an office. My view is the military base. There's a lot of movement inside the military base. There's a lot of smoke, I believe tear gas smoke. Sometimes you start hearing explosions from tear gas, rubber bullets. There are still some protesters near the entrance of the military base. But I mean, it's a very complicated situation. People go inside and outside the mall to see what is happening. They normally shoot at us, and they go inside the mall again. We're going to go out again, and so on and so on. But again, the situation is not easy. It's not an easy situation. We have seen how they can shoot to kill. I have seen militaries ran over civilians almost an hour ago. It's a very, very difficult situation right now, and from my point of view, it's not easy. It's not easy, and I'm going to stay here until I know it's safe to go out.
All right, Diego Áñez, many thanks for joining us there from Caracas. I want to thank George Chicarello-Mayer for being with us from Philadelphia, Natalia Brondler, Sarai Suarez. Stay with us. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Aaron Agunke. Aaron, we heard that young protester telling us there were difficulty accessing Twitter and other social media from Caracas right now, for him at least.
Yes, there has been some trouble with internet access. That said, we did get a lot of images earlier this morning, Venezuelan time, and throughout the afternoon. So for now, we are seeing a little bit of what's happening. Of course, this all started just to re-put things into context with Juan Guaido this morning, a kind of turning point in the movement, accompanied by soldiers, defected soldiers presumably, as well as opposition leader and recently released political prisoner here. So as the afternoon progressed, we've seen kind of different categories of images. We've got both sides calling for protests. So here you have pro-Maduro protesters in Caracas, similar images here as well. People mobilizing to show that there are people who do still support Maduro. In addition, there have been a lot of kind of violent, shocking images here. You can see tanks kind of smashing through crowds of protesters in what many Twitter users have called Venezuela's Tiananmen Square. So, yeah, shocking images coming out there as well. If we could get a little sound, I'm not sure if we can hear the sound on these images, but here we have kind of street fights between the pro-Maduro colectivos and defectors, military defectors who support Guaido, who are recognizable by their blue armbands and neckbands there. So really kind of scenes of anarchy coming out of Venezuela.
Yeah, and those images, a lot of those seem to be summary shots. Those shots. Yeah, right now it's all. The focus is on that air base, which is east of the capital.
Yes, the air base, the focus on the air base kind of begs the question of how much military support Guaido does have. We have this journalist who showed earlier, these images are from about maybe 2 hours ago, where he's saying the current situation is soldier versus soldier, which again begs the question of how much military support Guaido does have. You had Nicolas Maduro, he tweeted earlier saying that he has sufficient support, that he's kind of rallied his forces who have expressed their loyalty to the people, and he's calling for maximum mobilization. Similar calls for mobilization here, who are saying that it's really just a small group of defectors who are protesting. So it's unclear how extensive that support is for Guaido.
And you heard it here, our panel divided. over whether you call this an uprising or a coup.
Exactly. So the international community, in addition to the Venezuelan community, obviously is very, very divided about how to refer to it. There is some criticism, as is often the case, about international coverage, the terminology that they use to describe what's happening. So this particular outlet called it a coup. And in response, you have hundreds of Twitter users saying, you know, this is not a coup. This is simply people fighting for democracy, fighting for their rights. This Twitter user, a Venezuelan who's living in the United States, has given a suggested glossary for terms of how to refer to the different actors involved. So she suggests referring to Maduro simply as a dictator, Guaido as the legal interim president, the colectivos as criminal paramilitary forces. So just some suggestions there, if you will, for how different media outlets should refer to what's happening.
All right. Many thanks for that, Erin Ogunke. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you. And thank you for joining us here. More coverage of the fluid situation in Venezuela on France 24 and France24.com.